Today I wanted to talk about how to write more words, or more accurately how to optimize your writing routine to write more words. So Camp NaNoWriMo is coming up in April. Camp NaNoWriMo is like miniature NaNoWriMo, so NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month. Mix those words up. Clash. NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month. It happens in November every year, where the challenge is within the 30 days of November, you, or anyone who signs up, writes 50,000 words of a novel. Woo! Camp NaNoWriMo is the same thing, but set your own goal. You can do editing, you can do short stories, you can do whatever you want. Within the 30 days of April, and also separately the 30 days of July. Does July have 30 days? I think it's probably a really appropriate time to talk about it. And before we really get into that, because it's March and my book is just released, let me just do a little shameless plug. Mary Arlan Finding the Heir is book 2 in the Guardian Cadet series, the sequel to Mary Arlan Breaking the Curse. You can now buy this everywhere. It's out in the world. If you buy it from me, you get some super fun, cool goodies, like an invitation to the Elven Queen's Ball. I hear the advice a lot of just eat the frog. And just eat the frog is supposed to mean do the hard task first. Stop trying to build up to it, just do the hard task, right? Do the hard task first, then that's out of the way. And you hear that a lot, not in necessarily the eat the frog terms, but you hear that a lot with things like, get your writing done first thing in the morning, first chance you get your writing done, and then it's out of the way and you can do anything else with your day, right? That is the advice you get a lot, particularly around NaNoWriMo events, which is why I wanted to talk about this now. Because not everybody can just eat the frog. So in my humble opinion, there are two main types of working, or workers. I can't believe I'm putting things in binary categories. But crescendo and diminuendo people. So a crescendo is a musical term. They're both musical terms. A crescendo is where you start quiet and get louder, and a diminuendo is where you start loud and get quieter. So eat the frog is diminuendo, starting big and then doing the smaller stuff later, once you've used all your energy in that first thing. A crescendo person, like me, has to build up momentum with smaller tasks before reaching the point where I can do the big project. Like a crescendo in music, I start quiet and I get louder. So how does that translate into reality? Well, as soon as you know whether you are the kind of person who builds up to big projects or starts big and deals with small projects later, you can start figuring out what is the best format for you. Like, there's a lot of people out there, the vast majority of like super productive advice people talk about doing the big tasks first and not getting caught up in the little tasks. But depending on how much of a routine you have to your day or your writing time, that might be different for you. Like, I used to do all sorts of random, non-routine things. And then we got a dog. Porthos, come here. Come here and show yourself off. Good boy! Then we got a dog. Dogs need routine. They thrive on it. Why am I drinking tea now? Well, it's the morning. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning as of filming this. And 11 o'clock, tea time for Porthos. I've sort of vaguely referenced it in another video. But yeah, he gets up first thing in the morning. At about 9, he expects breakfast. Not for him, for me. He expects to go into the kitchen so I can make breakfast for myself. And if I don't do that, he pesters. You know the thing, like people have talked about it, if you want to remember to take your medication forevermore and you suck at remembering times for things, just feed your cat a treat whenever you take your medication and your cat won't let you forget. This is what I've accidentally done with Porthos. He will not let me not have tea time. We have breakfast at 9, we have tea time at 11. I did not intentionally train him to do this, but it is the case. We also have a lunchtime, and that is the most important piece of this whole routine conversation that I've just started. The whole routine conversation that I've just started, the whole point of it is basically that Porthos will hold me to a routine. And my routine means lunch at anywhere between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. That's when we go into the kitchen, that's what he gets out of it. We go into the kitchen, we have a little lunchtime playtime, and when we used to have a garden, I used to let him out in the garden, but he doesn't really need it. It's mostly just the playtime part. And I make lunch, and then we come back, we enjoy lunch, and then we get back to work. And by the time I get back to work, it's usually about 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock is apparently optimum writing time for me. I did discover that a while ago, actually, like quite a few years ago now, like 2018-ish was when I started realizing that I get the maximum amount of writing creativity time at between like 2 and 5 in the afternoon. It's not the most convenient time if you have a day job, but it's a pretty convenient time if you don't. And either way, it's good to know, because it's good to know that the evenings and the afternoons are the times that I am the most creative. So, but it's not just the case that I'm better in the afternoons. If I, for example, have been at a day job in the morning, because my life is chaos and I've had lots of different jobs with lots of different schedules, but if I have, for example, been at a day job in the morning, I can't just sit down at 2 o'clock and start writing out of nowhere. I can't take the morning off and then sit down at 2 o'clock and start writing out of nowhere. That just doesn't work for me. What works for me is doing small tasks first. And that's part of why I really love doing my short stories, is that a short story is a small task. A social media post is a small task. Answering an email is a small task. Sometimes it's the biggest task, and I have to get my wife to do it for me instead. Unpaid labour. The point is that doing these other tasks, these it's a giant project tasks first, sets me up for continuing that work momentum and getting into the big project that's really daunting to look at, that otherwise I would potentially be too daunted to start. How do you find out if you're a crescendo or diminuendo person? Experimentation. I talked about the fact of needing to practice in my foundation of all writing advice video. I will try and remember to link it in the cards in the description, but that might not happen. Good luck. But that is a quintessential piece of the puzzle, is you just have to try it. You just have to try and see what happens. If you start your day making social media posts, do you end up in a scroll hole? Do you neglect to do anything else? And you get to the end of your designated writer businessy time and end up having written no words? Maybe don't do that. Try writing first. Do you try writing first and get nowhere, and then by the time you get to those little tasks, you're feeling super creative and super productive, and you get a lot of those little tasks done but none writing because you tried to do it first and you just couldn't? Been there. Try it the other way. It can be really valuable if you're the kind of person who can deal with time, or if you can't and you use timers, to give yourself specific times to be able to do these things. Like, give yourself a designated amount of email answering time, give yourself a designated amount of social media research time. Whatever it is that you're doing is your small tasks. If you designate a certain amount of time to it, it still allows you to do the momentum building without getting trapped in a repetitive cycle of just procrastinating. And of course, obviously there is a level of procrastination involved. It's about whether it's productive or unproductive procrastination, which is also something I've talked about before. So once you know what type of person you are, once you know whether you are more inclined to crescendo working or diminuendo working, and bearing in mind that we do all adapt and change over our lives, and maybe that will change, and maybe if your work day changes, like if I start doing morning out of like day job work again, maybe that will change. Maybe my life will change fundamentally to the point where things are just different and I'll end up being a diminuendo person instead. Maybe that will happen. I don't know. Things change. People are adaptable. But once you start figuring out what format works for you best right now, once you start figuring out what kind of working practice works for you best right now, that's when you can start figuring out what format of writing you work best in. What do I mean by formats of writing? I mean, are you going to write more and better words? More and better. This is important. Because if you're writing a lot of shit, or you're writing less but good, that is a decision to make there for you. If you're writing not much but it's gold, that is kind of valuable in itself. But if you are, so finding out what works best for you to get the optimum combination of numbers of words and quality of words. So does typing on a computer work best for you? Or is it too much pressure? Is it too much blank screen fear? Is it too much screen time? Is it gonna hurt your hands to do the typey thing? Is there some barrier between you and typing on a computer? Or like, sometimes I have the thing where I'll open a Word document, or I'll open Scrivener, or I'll open an online doc, whatever. I don't care what document software you use. I'll open my document software and I'll be staring at that blinking cursor and going, ugh. Or I'll be trying to type something and then it won't be exactly right, so I delete it, and then it is literally gone forever and I can never get it back. In the way that, like, when you handwrite something and you cross it out, it's still there. You can still go back and look at it later, like, what did I say in that draft? You know, like, does the typing on a computer work for you? Does typing on a phone work for you, or a phone with an external keyboard? I have that now. Or is that too informal? Or is it just too much work on your thumbs? Again, external keyboards can be a benefit for that. Is it too small a screen? Do you just not like the format of phones? Or do you not like any of the document softwares you can use on a phone? That's totally fair too. Like, my favourite thing to write my books in is Scrivener. But I have an Android phone, so I can't use Scrivener on my phone. Apparently you can on iOS, but ow. Does handwriting with or without doodles work best for you, or does it take too much work and energy and effort to type that up later? Is translating it from a handwritten format to a word processing format just too much? Because that's totally fair. Does handwriting hurt your wrists too much? Is it a pain? Do you just not want to use notebooks? Are you the kind of person who likes writing on, like, paper and then next thing you know the paper's all gone and you can't find it? Does dictation work best for you, or do you need to, like, view it properly? That's not the word I mean. Do you need to view it differently than dictation allows? Do you get annoyed at the mistakes that dictation makes? Like, obviously, the better the dictation software you use, the less mistakes there are likely to be. Something like Dragon Naturally Speaking, which my wife used to have via the DSA, Disabled Students Allowance, for her dyspraxia, was great. But then it was an old version, so it stopped working when she updated her computer, and that was like an absolute pain. And it's a really expensive software, but it is really high quality. Like, she was doing masters in Greek and Archaeology of the Classical Mediterranean, master's degree, and she had to input a lot of, like, Greek words, and it worked. It could cope with that because that's what it's designed for. But, like, the free one you get with, like, Google Docs or Microsoft Word, or even otter.ai, which is the one that I tend to use, which is actually for Zoom meeting notes, but it works pretty well. It doesn't cope with character names. It doesn't cope with, like, you know, all the issues with auto-generated captions? Like, I've been doing this read aloud recently. Read with me on Instagram recently in the lead up to the release of Mary Arlan Finding the Heir. And, do you mind? And one of the things that I've been really frustrated about is the fact that whenever I say the word Merry, which is the main character's name, M-E-R-R-Y, it comes up with Mary, M-A-R-Y. And I'm just like, that's so freaking frustrating because I have to go back into all the captions and adjust it. It's like it can't cope with my username, Nopoodles. It can't cope with my actual name either, which is very frustrating. But also completely on brand because human people can't cope with that either. And it's okay if it's too cost prohibitive or the mistakes annoy you too much, just pick a different format. But you have to try the formats before you can decide what works best for you. Like I've said, I've done all of this experimentation. I have been fortunate enough to be able to try all these things first. And I wouldn't be talking about this now if I hadn't tried it and I hadn't tried to figure it out for myself. And typically speaking, because again, we are all adapting and changing all the time, my best, most optimum working situation, my best, most optimum working day is in the morning I post something to Instagram because they need to be posted every day. And I have been having more than my fair share of trouble with auto-scheduling software. So first thing in the morning, first thing in my workday morning, or, you know, on the weekend also Saturdays, I post to Instagram. I post a reel to Instagram. Usually a reel I've made a while before I actually post it, but I post a reel to Instagram. Then I check things like my content calendar, my short story scheduling, because I can schedule that up in advance, and my YouTube scheduling, because I can schedule that up in advance. And I make sure that all the stuff that needs to be done for that is done. Maybe I'll do a draft of my mailing list email, which comes out once a month. Maybe I'll do a quick draft of something else. Maybe I'll, you know, reply to an email. Maybe I'll set up some packages to be shipped out, like signed book packages to be shipped out. Maybe I'll whatever. Lots of the little small tasks. Those are the things that I do first thing in the morning. That will take me as long as it takes. I can go all the way up to my stopping point, mentally speaking. The time that I have deadlines to end that is when Porthos starts pestering me for lunch. The afternoon is writing time. So we do the piddly jobs in the morning, and then in the afternoon I get writing done. When it's NaNoWriMo, if I'm participating in NaNoWriMo, I will do the piddly jobs until 11 o'clock 11Z's tea time. Again, Porthos pestered. And then I will do an extra bout of writing in the morning, and then lots of writing. It works well for me. If I try to start my day writing, 9 times out of 10 I end up spending the whole day procrastinating, and I only start writing at 2 anyway. So I might as well use that procrastination time to do something else valuable. My best working practice is to handwrite things in a notebook. It is going to be my NaNoWriMo project in April, if I'm doing NaNoWriMo in April, because we are also moving house. So I might not. But on the other hand, actually, this is ideal for doing NaNoWriMo in April if we're moving house, because I don't need to have power for this, I don't need to have Wi-Fi for this, I don't need to be at home for this. This works everywhere. It's a pen and a notebook. I can just scribble my thoughts down for a sci-fi project that I'm working on. That's my ideal. I love handwriting things, and part of the reason that I love handwriting things is because I had to do it at school. When I was writing stories at school, between classes, in class, between classes, in class, I was scribbling all of these things into a notebook because that was what I had. And the reason that I like the notebooks I like is because they're easy to carry around and easy to write on when you don't have like a table. Like this one is freaking ideal. It's a little bit bigger than I normally get. I normally get A5 notebooks, but this was a gift from my mum. Thank you, Mum. And it's got a proper cardboard cover and cardboard back. So it's really sturdy. Like this isn't gonna bend at any point. It's not floppy. Like I've got plenty of notebooks, like different version of the same notebook, A5 size. Plastic cover and backing. Floppy as fuck. Just not perfect. It's not ideal. Anyway, the point is that the reason that I like handwriting things is probably because I've just had a lot of experience handwriting short stories and handwriting my book ideas. Like the first ever draft of Mary Ellen Breaking the Curse was all handwritten across 2 notebooks. Like, it's bad stuff. The story is everywhere. I fixed it up a lot. But the concept for it's all in those handwritten notebooks. And every time I get to a project that I'm like, right, this can be a book, I immediately leap into, I need a notebook for the book. But I also jump between notebooks and typing up, because typing up from what you've handwritten is kind of painstaking sometimes. And sometimes you'll get stuck in a scene, and one of the best things I've ever found for getting stuck in a scene is just typing up that scene, which obviously is not ideal for NaNoWriMo because, you know, that means you kind of end up without extra words because you've just rewritten your words, but you can count them twice. Like, I do genuinely think that you should be able to count those words twice if you've changed them. Like, if you are editing as you go, which I always do. I'll talk about that in a different video later, but I always edit as I go. No, I have talked about that before. No, right, only edit. I've talked about it before. I always edit as I go. I always do it. It's so much more productive. Like, I was writing this fantasy, like urban fantasy book that I want to publish at some point, while I was like in January, February time, while I'd already got another book out with feedback readers, and I was in the run-up to publishing Mary Ellen Finding the Heir, and I needed another project to work on, but it couldn't be the sequel to the sci-fi thing that was out with beta readers, which is what I intend to write for NaNoWriMo. I have tried to write a sequel to that book several times, but that's a separate issue. But I couldn't focus on writing that. I needed to do something that was a completely separate project, so I've got this idea for this urban fantasy story, so I started writing that, and I got to a specific point of that, and I was like, gosh, I know what needs to happen at the end, but I don't know how to get there. And that's sort of usually what I do, is I'll write to a certain point, figure out what happens for the rest of the story, and then I'll be there like, right, I don't know how to get there. And the reason I don't know how to get there, I've since discovered after many, many years of trying to do writing. The reason I don't know how to get there is because I haven't put the foreshadowing in yet, or I haven't realised what foreshadowing I've already put in. Like, I haven't recognised it when I've written it because I didn't know what it was foreshadowing for, consciously. Subconsciously, I've put it in there on purpose. Consciously, no, I didn't. So I have to get to a certain point and then start all the way over again, and that's sort of how I write books. Is I'll do a bit of it, I'll go back and rewrite that bit and a bit more, and a bit more, and a bit more, and a bit more, until I have like a whole actual book. Is it the most convenient way to write books? No. Is it the only way I've found that works for me? Yes. Am I going to keep doing it? Probably. Am I going to try other stuff? Obviously. I love experimenting with things. We are not fixed. We are constantly growing and adapting. It's great. I feel like I've gone off on a tangent. The point is, that's my ideal writing routine. Handwriting from 2 o'clock onwards once I've spent my morning doing other random shit. Maybe you're the same, maybe you're the opposite. Maybe you are chaos incarnate. Sometimes I write on my phone. Why? Because it's convenient. I will do whatever it takes to write as many words as possible. And the reason I want to write as many words as possible is because I want to get all the scenes I have in my head out of my head, so I can make room for new scenes to happen in my head, so I can put those out of my head. Do you see how this is going to go? So anyway, that is my personal recommendations for how to write more words. I hope you find it helpful, or at least entertaining. All the links you need to find me all over the internet, including a link to my Ko-fi account if you feel like supporting the channel, are listed in the description box below. If you're interested in my sci-fi project, stick around by clicking the like and subscribe buttons right next to that description box, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time with another video. Probably, but again, I'll be moving house, so maybe that one will be skipperoony. We'll see. Bye.